Hi, everybody. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Fundamentalists podcast. My name is Elliott Morgan, and I'm here with Dr. Peter Rollins. Today, we're going to be discussing all sorts of things about dreams, but first, it's time for a brand new segment of How Many of Pete's Books Did I Destroy? So, Pete, how are you doing while I bring up, if you want to riff for a moment, and,
Yeah, this is painful for me, man. This is like I love this section, this new section of the
it hurts
podcast.
me. It hurts me, just so you
Yeah.
know.
Oh,
I
that's great.
Uh, have you ever heard of the? Now, forgive me, our listeners, viewers. There might be a chance I repeat some of the books. I will say I looked at the books that you have yesterday in the garage. You have tons of books, tons still that survived.
Brilliant.
Several.
In the tens.
You have dozen books that
Yes.
survived. Uh,
Oh, yeah, because I
Genealogy
showed
of
you.
Nihilism.
Oh, genealogy of nihilism.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. That was that written by a guy called Connor. What was the guy's name?
you
He's
got
a
it.
Northern Irish guy.
Really? Okay, there you go. Connor
I
Cunningham.
think
Of
so.
course, that's an Irish name.
Cunningham, yes. Um, Yeah, that's an interesting book. He was part of a group, loosely part of a group called the Radical Orthodoxy,
Yes.
and I met him. Those guys, he had to say it, but those Radical Orthodox guys were all not very approachable. Put it that way, you know.
Oh, serious boys.
Yeah, yeah, so I did meet him once, and it was a weird encounter. But they were a very smart and interesting bunch. Completely disagree in some respects with them, and not in other ways. But oh yeah, that's fine. I mean, I've read
Okay,
that book, so
it's in
that's
a
good.
dump somewhere.
Yeah,
Um, Systematic theology just sounds boring. I don't think you care about that, right? Systematic theology.
Paul Tillich's
Damn it,
systematic
damn
theology,
it, damn it. Ah, damn. That's not the
all
face I
three
was hoping.
volumes. What?
No, not all three volumes. Yes. Is that a bad one? What about
That's a bad.
Baudrillard?
That's it's systematic theology, three volumes. It sounds boring, but that's actually really good. Like Tillich was one of the few
Hmm.
people in the 20. He was one of the best kind of theologians and a very good philosopher, brilliant
Oh,
philosopher.
yes,
So it's really,
yes. Tillich is
yeah,
great, right?
yeah.
Well,
I'll just rebuy those. That'll be a rebuy one.
radical hermeneutics.
My favorite, John Caputo.
It is Caputo. Caputo's out.
That's a brilliant. Well, all of Caputo's books are brilliant. He is an incredible author. Um, Pretty much every book he writes is a winner. But that's one of his early ones. I
Is he
mean, one
like
day I'll
Tillich? What's
probably.
the? You throw out these. I know these names like in the from. I know Tillich and Caputo, but I don't know what they're all about. I know you reference them, but I have no idea in and of themselves what either of those people are actually think about anything.
Yeah, you would like them. So, like Paul Tillich, he how could you describe? Well, he's his one of his central ideas was this notion of ultimate concern, that kind of we as human beings have this experience of something that is ultimate, something that kind of is like that we have an ultimate concern, which is something that we feel we should do no matter how painful it is, or that we shouldn't betray it no matter how much money or whatever we get. Like this ultimate concern that human beings are caught up in something ultimate, and this is kind of the dimension of faith for him. Is this? So he's an existential theologian, and he talks about really to be human is to have ultimate concern, and even if you don't think you have it, deep down there's a sense in which we're all taken up by a concern, but that when we try to name it, we lose it. So almost like in the pursuit of truth, you're already taken up by truth. So even if you think there's no truth and you're arguing that there's no truth, in a sense, you're showing an ultimate concern for the question of truthfulness. Or an artist, they may not be able to, they never are able to paint something truly beautiful that fully incarnates beauty, but they're caught up in the ultimate concern of beauty. Beauty is what
Nice.
animates their failure. So his work on that is very brilliant. And yeah, that's him. And then John Caputo's brilliant at this idea of that there is a call in everything. There's a promise in the world. So, for example, we talk about democracy. Democracy isn't something that completely exists. There's forms of democracy, but there's a promise in the word democracy for something that we haven't got yet. There is a there's a promise in the word
It's like an
justice,
ideal.
and a kind of ideal that's never met. It's like so. It's an ideal. It's like an eternal openness, and for him, kind of faith is a sensitivity toward this openness and this possibility, and so kind of like that's part of what
Nice.
he's about. I mean, he's a great guy.
Not anymore.
Wrote a great
He's
book
gone.
on religion. What's that?
Um, I
He's
said
gone.
not
Oh yes, I
anymore.
thought
He's
he's
gone.
gone. He's still alive, but his book is
Mm-mm.
gone.
His book is gone. Yes. And then the last one we'll hit, the historical Jesus.
Oh, yeah, that's Shelton or no, what's his name? She, uh,
The
based on
ability for you to even remotely remember these names is insane, dude. This is your brain is. I would be exhausted just knowing the things that you know. Crossan. Is that what you said?
yeah, Crossan. Is it John Dominic Crossan? Yeah.
You would
Yes.
win the most boring game show that anyone could ever come up with, and the most poorly rated.
Yeah, yeah. That's a yeah. Those guys, the guy, he's very interesting. Just in terms of like, I'm not interested in this question very much, but I'm interested in some of the scholarship of kind of what can you say about this historical figure. This is Jesus a figure of history, and what can you say outside of kind of like dogmatics. So yeah, he's a
Who's
biggie in that area.
Yeah, I've been watching this guy on Instagram named Dan McClellan, and he has a PhD in theology and religion, specializing in conceptualizations of deity, scripture, and religious identity. But he does these debunking things from a scholarly perspective, where he'll find TikToks of people being like, "They found Noah's Ark," and he'll be like, "No, they
Oh
did
yeah.
not." And he has this very like deadpan voice, but I really like his
Jay
stuff. But
likes
it's the
him.
same.
Jay sent me some of his stuff. Ah, yeah.
Yeah, I think maybe it was Jay that I found it through, and or because I saw Jay likes his stuff a lot, along with Joel McHale of all people. And who else? There's a couple people that are finding him that I think it's kind of funny to see them who's interested in it. But it is the same thing where it's like I get interested in the scholarly like historical element, but I also like what people get out of it. I think that's what you're getting at. Like it's not really about the historical accuracy of everything. It's more like what you learn and what you take away. Is that what you're saying?
Is that what I'm saying about what Crossan's saying?
About that kind, yeah, about not being into the historical part of Jesus or whether or
Oh,
not
oh yes.
the
What I'm yeah. Sorry, you're exactly yeah, yeah. The reason why I'm not as taken by those questions is yes, it's more like a dream. It's kind of like if you think
yeah,
of the Bible like a dream, it's kind of like whether or not things happened, it captures people's subjectivity. Like so many people, millions of people have been caught up in this notion, and what's more important to me is what people have been caught up in.
yeah.
That so in the same way in a dream, I'm not asking a person, "Oh, did you really see a red bus the other day? You dreamt about a red bus, and you were late for work, and you almost jumped on it, but a dog bit you. Well, was there a dog that you saw yesterday, and is there a red bus that you saw?" I don't care about whether the person saw a dog yesterday. I'm interested in why a dog appears in the dream. So that's why I'm kind of more interested in that more existential question.
What a seamless freaking segue, dude. All of a sudden, look at that. Now we're talking about freaking dreams, which is the freaking subject of this topic, and you just you dove right in. That's perfect.
Yeah, there you go. Like I'm a pro
You're a
man. What can I
pro.
say?
Yeah,
Yeah.
unbelievable. Do
Even
you
even
have what
got
are
a new
you?
microphone.
Yeah.
Even got my
What do you?
kind of Joe Rogan microphone.
Yeah, it's got that arm. It extends down. You can move it around to adjust
Yeah.
for where you want to sit. Really cool. Meanwhile, I have my little one that I have to hover around like it's a little punching bag. But okay, so do you have thoughts on dreams, Pete? You said you had new thoughts. How should we do this? Well, I've never done this
Oh
before.
yes,
You're the pro.
I did, but you were the one who suggested lucid dreaming. So I thought like, and I
Oh,
definitely have some thoughts on that and some thoughts on dream work. But was there a reason why you wanted to talk about lucid dreaming?
well, I think honestly because we've talked about dreams before, And I was like, what about lucid dreaming? And you hear people talk about lucid dreaming. Here's my relationship with lucid dreaming, Pete. I've never done it myself. I love the idea of it. If you're unfamiliar with the idea of lucid dreaming, which I'm sure basically everybody is, but it's the idea that you can train yourself in waking life to be able to identify whether or not you're in a, or be able to identify when you're in a dream, basically. And you can count your fingers sometimes, or you can try to spin around. It's really funny. And you can look down and you can go, I am not dreaming. I am not dreaming. I've read some stuff and it's very fascinating. You hypnotize yourself a little bit. And the idea is that in a dream, you can then realize you're in it and you can control your environment. You can fly. That's what everybody says that they immediately do. But what I've found recently is that there's a very interesting thing where people sometimes, when they are lucid dreaming, and this seems to be happening, I've heard this from more than one person, that they will ask the person or say to the people in the dreams that they know that this is a dream because they are aware. They've trained their brain to know that it's a dream. And the people in the dream will laugh at them and say, no, it is not a dream. I think that's
Wow.
very fun. And
Yes.
so then I've heard people say lucid dreaming is actually not possible. You're really just like somewhere between sleeping and awake, yeah, so that's it. And then people do it, and then I've never heard of somebody who does it consistently. I feel like everybody gets into it for a second, it sounds interesting, and then they don't do anything with it
Yeah.
afterward. So that's all I have.
Yeah. Well, so I lucid dream. Like that's I lucid dreamt twice in the last few weeks,
Really?
which is not common for me at all because I don't remember my dreams. But definitely in the last couple of weeks, I became aware in my dream that I was dreaming. And the one I can remember, I can only remember fragments of it, but I was I was in my apartment, but of course it kind of wasn't my apartment either. It kind of was and it wasn't. And there was a dog that I was feeding, and there was part of me I was suddenly going like, "Do I have a dog?" And I was like, "Do I have a dog? I didn't know I had a dog." And I was like, "Is this a dream?" And I was trying to remember techniques that I've heard. I don't even know if I've really heard these. I think I've heard them, but one of the things I I remembered in the dream was turning on the lights. He said if you turn
Hmm.
on a light, it won't go on, or it'll go on very gradually because there's no light coming into your eyes. So you can't just turn on a light in a dream. So I was looking for light sockets, and I was also going, oh yeah, I should read something because I think that if you read, you can't
Yeah,
really read in your dream, and it
words
doesn't
don't
stay
show up.
consistent. Yeah, so I was kind of doing this, but what was hilarious to me more when I woke up, and this is an interesting thing I want to talk about, is the connection between lucid dreaming and psychosis. But is that I was running around in this apartment that wasn't really my apartment, feeding a dog, not knowing if I had a dog, and some other random things all happening. And I was questioning, am I in a dream? Like, if in my waking life I just suddenly a dog appeared, and my apartment radically changed all of its rooms, and suddenly there was an elephant walking through, the kitchen, you'd immediately know something was up. But in
Yeah.
dreams, the most random things happen, but you've got no perception of past and future. Like I couldn't remember if I had a dog or not, or what the layout of my house was. Like your level of consciousness is so low that I'm sitting trying to turn on lights to work out whether I'm dreaming when it's
Yeah.
obvious I'm dreaming because everything's so nuts that's happening
It's
around
so
me.
great.
you know um, and I think that's what it's like to be in a psychotic break. That's what I was thinking afterwards. It's like if you want to know, when I lived in LA, and I saw people having psychotic experiences on the streets, um, which
Oh,
sadly
so,
is kind
okay.
of
You can
crazy.
just say my name. All right. I'm right here, dude. Go on.
Yeah. But you go like, what is it like to be in a world where someone's saying, "Listen, the FBI have got like they put something in my teeth, and they know where I am, and I think you're working for them, and all of this stuff." And you go like, how? What does that experience feel like subjectively? Like, and at first I'm going like, I can't put myself in the mindset of that person. But actually, in lucid dreaming, that's kind of what it's like. Like the weirdest stuff's happening, and you're kind of there, and you're kind of
Yeah.
conscious, and it kind of makes sense, and it also completely doesn't. You've got no sense of the future, no sense of the past, no memory. It's. I think that's what it's like. Probably the closest we can get to being in that experience.
Yeah, it's like mush. It reminds me of mushrooms. Speaking of my shirt, if you are listening to this over audio, you might not be treated to the video forum at youtube.com/Elliott Morgan, because I'm wearing arguably the coolest shirt I've ever owned, and Pete is sitting in
That's
arguably the
very,
coolest
very
spot.
arguably.
Very arguably. Oh, you don't like it? Do you not like this shirt? Well, this would be the opposite of the kind of shirt that you would probably like. That makes sense.
Listen, you've seen my wardrobe. Everything is gray or black.
Yeah, walking into your wardrobe also makes people want to turn on the light and find a light switch and shed some sort of brightness into that hellhole. But yeah, if you're not seeing it, my shirt is a bright blue collar and giant psychedelic woven mushrooms on it. Anyway, we both look beautiful, and Pete's apartment looks beautiful. So anyway, we are taking mushrooms sounds like what you're talking about. That sense of not having the realities get blurred a little bit. I was reminded of, I always go back to the Pete Holmes bit where he talks about trying to explain sleep to an alien. And he's like, you can explain food. Like, I eat things, I take their energy, and then I have energy. But anything else, and like at the end of the day, I just got to shut it all down. And for like 8, 10, 12 hours, just got to put the whole thing to rest. And then the alien's like, well, that sounds boring. And he's like, no, it's not boring. My brain plays movies that I'm in. And you're like, oh man, that is exactly what happens. My interest is in specifically boring dreams. I don't think boring dreams get enough attention, and we end up talking about lucid dreaming. But I often have dreams where there's absolutely little to no difference between them and my ordinary life. For example, last night I had a dream, which also I very rarely remember my dreams, like you, Pete. And I had multiple last night. One of them, I meant yesterday to email my professor to set up like a conversation or a office hours kind of deal about dissertation stuff and dissertation development. And I had a dream where we had office hours. It was him. He was talking to me. I brought up exactly what I was going to say, verbatim. I brought up different areas of research I was interested in. And then I brought up some other things that were all accurate. Like, there wasn't a single thing in it that was like, whoa. It was just like it didn't really happen. It was just it was like, all right. It was like I had the conversation without having to have the conversation with him. And then all he said at the end when I suggested something for an area of research, he looks at me and goes, yes. And also speaking apparently is really uncommon in dreams, actually hearing words spoken. And so the last thing I heard was yes, and then I woke up and I was like, huh. So I'll be talking to him about that.
Are you saying that like everything that kind of was said to him, you either are wanting to say or have said to your real supervisor?
Yeah, I mean, I will say it. I was going to say it, and everything was like, I mean, I wrote it down, and it was literally just going through the conversation with him. Met in the classroom. I was on campus. Asked about dissertation. I even remember taking out my laptop. It was my laptop. I explained in it that I might get a little upset because I'm frustrated. And then I go through all the different areas. And then he goes at the very end, I go, what about this? And he goes, yes. So there's wish fulfillment, I'm assuming. Because you're just going like, he's saying yes to probably whatever I unconsciously am interested or consciously interested in talking about. But I love the dreams where it's just like I wake up and I go, okay. There's no, the whole trope of people being like, oh, I had the craziest dream last night. Enough of that. I say we talk about our boring dreams.
Well, what was the frustration bit, or can you talk about that? Because that's interesting.
I'll talk about it vaguely, but it's basically just about the areas of not knowing what I want to write about for the dissertation and study for 2 years, and so that's the frustration.
Because my guess is that if I was doing dream work with you, like I would go like, oh, that experience of frustration is a displacement of something else, So, but anyway,
sex. Is it sex?
Yes, it's sex. Your small penis. Yeah, we always come back to that. Yes, yeah.
I've sublimated that thing so many times.
Yeah. So actually, this brings to the point that I kind of maybe want to talk. We've talked about this before, but I I am very interested in how to interpret dreams. So like you tell me that dream, and like, God, right, is there something in it that's interesting? What is it in a dream that kind of like you can
Mm-hmm.
take out of it? Do dreams have anything to tell us? Does that dream that you had have anything to tell you? And funnily enough, I find it easier to interpret other people's dreams than my own. I can never interpret my own dreams, but I'm more successful when I'm somebody else. I think it's because you're so close to your own dream; they're an enigma to you. But when you hear someone else's dream, you can sometimes, make connections that
Yeah.
the person can see. Um, so even in your example of like, you're talking to the supervisor, and there's a frustration. I do think in free association that would probably come out as something kind of interesting. But uh, here's my reading of how to interpret a dream. See what you think. Do you want to hear it?
Okay. Yeah, of course. I
Okay.
love this.
Yeah. And I'm going to rely heavily on Alenka Sapanchik, who in her book What is Sex, which is a great book, um, actually very very kind of contemporary, as in there's a whole thing in popular culture about gender and sexuality. And so What is Sex is a very good book that's kind of about that, kind of from a philosophical psychoanalytic angle. Anyway, um,
Cool.
she and I think I've mentioned this story before, but she uses a little silly joke to kind of like brilliantly illustrate, I think, dream work. And so the story is, I think you've heard it, is that a man comes home from work, he's exhausted, and he sits down in front of the TV, turns it on, he's waiting for a TV show, and he says to his wife, "Get me a drink before it starts." Right? And his wife goes, gets him a drink, and he drinks it down. He says, "Listen, get me another drink before it starts." And then she gets him another drink, and he says it a third time. She's getting really frustrated by him just sitting on the couch, waiting for this TV show, just not doing anything. And he says, "Look, get me another beer before it starts." And then she says, "You're lazy, you're good for nothing. I'm not here just to get you whatever you want." And then he says, "It started." Right? So the line at the end is kind of, you suddenly realize that what he means is before the argument starts. So Sapanchik uses this in a few different ways, which is brilliant. One is, as an aside, that that he doesn't realize that he is implicated in what he thinks is just happening to him. Right? So somebody's in a bad relationship and they think, "I'm just in this bad relationship and this bad relationship is happening to me." But often we are implicated in it. Otherwise we would leave, otherwise we wouldn't have done it. So we often don't see ourselves as implicated in our own, or in the fantasy of, like, you always hear somebody outside late at night and you always think, "Oh, there's somebody trying to break into the house." You think it's out there, but if you're constantly having that thought, you're implicated in it. Like, there's something of you that is in that thought. So that's one thing about the joke. But what Sapanchik does is she says, "Well, let's imagine that that's a dream." Right? Let's imagine that that story is actually, I've had that dream, a dream where I've come home from work, I'm sitting down, I'm exhausted, about to watch a football game on the TV, and I'm saying to my partner, "Get me a drink before it starts." And this happens 3 or 4 times in the dream, and eventually my partner blows up, gets really angry with me, right? And that's how I describe the dream to my analyst. Um, what Freud says, which is very clever, right? Freud says what we always think, or what we tend to think, is that the content of the dream is where all of the meat is. So what somebody might do is they would say, "Well, listen, I think that this shows that you're frustrated with your partner. I think this dream shows that there's problems in that relationship, that the relationship, you feel, whether rightly or wrongly, you feel that it's getting in the way of you enjoying your life." Right? Something like that, some interpretation like that. And of course, I would say, "Oh, yeah, that really resonates with me." Right? I'm here in therapy because I've got a bad relationship. We're always arguing. The dream reflects that. So the dream has this content that tells me kind of what I already know, right? So I go, "Oh, yeah, that's right." But Sapanchik says, no, no, that's not what proper psychoanalytic reading is, not about the content. It's about the form, the structure of the dream. And
Mm-hmm.
what the dream tells you is actually that you enjoy the argument with your partner, right? And so the psychoanalyst would be the one to do the punchline of the joke. I would tell the dream. I'm waiting for the TV program to start. I'm asking for beer. She keeps bringing me beers, and then she really blows up. The analyst might intervene and say, "Oh, so it started," right? And then in that moment, I suddenly have a realization. Oh, I'm the one who's starting these arguments. It's not my partner, really. I'm, I am the director. I am the conductor
Mm-hmm.
creating this spark in it,
Instigating. Yeah.
instigating. And in that moment, and this is very key, I think, for psychoanalysis, is when you go to an analyst, you go with a symptom, and a symptom is always the manifestation of a contradiction. So maybe I went to the analyst because I have a bad relationship with my partner, and this comes out in that dream. That's the symptom. The analyst is not there, Sapanchik says, is not there to cure the contradiction, but is there to solve the solution. So the solution is the arguments. Actually, I think that the arguments I'm having with my partner is the symptom that covers over a contradiction. And I'm getting enjoyment out of it, but I don't know I'm getting enjoyment out of it. I don't know that I'm enjoying fighting with my partner. I think I'm not. She thinks she's not, but in some way we're getting jouissance from it, and so we're getting excitation from it. But in the moment that the analyst says, "Oh, then it started," I realize, "Oh shit, I get enjoyment out of this. I want to have the arguments." And in analysis, you basically rob it of its enjoyment. You suddenly go, "Oh," and you're confronted with something, and then you can kind of ask the question, what is it? Why am I arguing? So, for example, I might want to argue with my mother. Maybe she's long dead, but I've
Why?
wanted to argue with her, but I've also been scared to argue with her as a child. I was afraid to argue. So it's displaced onto my partner. I'm arguing with her, and my anger at my mother is displaced onto my wife. But in the moment that I realize that I'm enjoying the argument, then I can have the insight that, oh my goodness, I actually am arguing with my mother. So that for
We're
me
all
is
terrible.
you're all terrible, yes, and that would be called for Freud the unconscious dimension of the dream. So the latent, the manifest content is the beer, the TV, the sofa, the partner. That's the manifest content. The latent thought is you're not getting on with your partner. The TV is maybe a representation of entertainment and uh, all of that, and you just want to kind of get on with your life. But then the navel of the dream is the form, which is, oh, you actually enjoy the arguments with your wife. You actually instigate them because you're getting something out of it.
Very nice. I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. I've heard you say that before, that joke that she
Yeah.
talks about, and I until now thought you literally meant that the show that he wanted to watch was starting. And
Ah, okay.
you talked to me about this before, and I was like, I'll nod, and I was like, that's cool. But now I get the show is the argument, and so that alone
Yes.
was a revelation for me.
Oh,
So
very good. I
that's
know I'm not telling it well enough. I have to tell it better.
yeah, no, that was great. That was you did it right. It was my dumb brain that didn't get it. Do robots dream of electric sheep?
Is that another one that was destroyed? Is that your way of telling me that Philip K. Dick is also gone?
Oh, is that yeah? That is Philip K. Dick. No, no, I didn't know you had Philip K. Dick in there.
Oh
Well, I'll
yeah.
definitely
Oh,
make sure. That's I can't wait. I'll have to go through that. But no, I just that popped in my head because I was reading about that. One of my professors is writing a book on technology. And anyway, do animals when they're dreaming? When my dog dreams, is there latent and manifest content, Pete? Is there an unconscious in animals?
see, that's interesting, especially with the AI, because I would argue that pretty much no. There's in most animals there's no unconscious because I would argue that the unconscious only exists in the symbolic, in the signifier, which is human. But the question then is, will AI eventually dream? Which is,
Well,
will AI have an unconscious? That's fascinating.
that's fascinating. But also, I mean, doesn't that mean that dreams predate humans, right? Like on the evolutionary chain. You can imagine that there were non-humans that were dreaming.
Yes, but then the
And
dream
so
would be, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
so the dream gets hijacked by some function of the psyche at some point in the history of evolution when contradiction arises and you realize and you go and you look in a mirror?
Yes, yes, absolutely. That's a great way of saying it. Hijacked this in the same way that sexuality is hijacked. So, um, French psychoanalyst Laplanche talks about this, where he says the issue for us, the reason why human beings are very weird sexually, um, is because by the time we become able to have sex, right, whenever we kind of basically go through puberty, um, already, he says, the drive has taken the seat of sexuality, which means that animals mate, they have sex, but human beings, we have all sorts of rituals and fantasies and all sorts of things we have to do, even if it's going out for a meal or buying presents or lighting candles or dressing up in certain things, certain activities that we enjoy. Like our sexuality is not, let's inverted commas, pure, right? Our sexuality is, Freud says, polymorphously perverse because it's kind of like it's that our mating instinct is hijacked by all sorts of fantasies, libidinal investments, and so in the same way, dreaming, like an animal might dream, for human beings, it's hijacked by the unconscious. That's all. Like the unconscious kind of hijacks the basic mechanism of dreams and communicates through it in weird
Yeah.
ways.
And it'll hijack our language and hijack every and through
Yes.
parapraxis. I didn't know that Freud was working with sexologists in the beginning, and that when that was a fledgling field, and helped the sexologists unite with the in like an interdisciplinary way with the mental psychologists, psychics. What I don't know what they would call themselves back in the day, but I was reading about that whole thing of him kind of with what book was it? It's like 3 essays or something, and it was like a revolution where he took all the theories of sexologists, and then in like 3 essays was like, nope, this is why we're gonna reframe everything and take it, and everyone was like, holy crap, he's back on top, everybody, because that was when I guess he was struggling post realizing that not every girl was being molested by her dad in a
Oh
literal
yeah.
way.
Yes, that
Uh,
was the big insight. Yeah, seduction theory, the rejection of seduction theory. That you're right. That's where kind of psychoanalysis kind of really becomes psychoanalysis, or that's one of the places where Freud goes, oh, trauma isn't necessarily related to actual abuse. That was a big transformation.
been doing this class. It's called psychoanalytic openings, which I don't know why they. I feel like that name of a class, in terms of naming a class, is so funny, but I don't know how to bring it up because I'm like, you guys really called it psychoanalytic openings? Like that's like you just know what you're doing. Like, come on, that's so silly. But it's about like current conversations in psychoanalysis, and I brought up Lacan a few times just in comments and stuff, and man, you would not believe how much I can butcher what he says
Yeah.
or what he believes. Like I'll say words and I'm like something there is kind of like if you look at the sentence as a whole, there's like probably something accurate in it. But when you actually read what I'm saying, I think I'm screwing up all of the words. I'll be like I was talking about the ego, and I was talking about like it's worth noting that like the ego doesn't really exist, my understanding, from a Lacanian perspective, and it's sort of the gap or the lack between or the contradiction between the uh, I said it. I believe it or not, I said it better in the comment, but it was about there's no lack. And as soon as I'm done, I'm like, nope. I was like, I should have just not said anything, but I got words in
Well,
for
that means
my
you're doing the
minimum
can right.
requirement.
Yeah, you're doing the can.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean, you have to spend 10 years of just really struggling with them, and kind of
yeah,
that's very good.
making and all
um,
of his little math problems. But yeah,
oh yes, and math themes are fascinating. I'm reading about them again at the moment. I'm actually rereading that book, What Is Sex by Sapanchik, and it's very good on that stuff. I very highly
um,
recommend it.
what do you make of the dream of you feeding a dog?
Yeah, well, the funny thing is that's the only bit that I kind of remember. There was a lot more to it that was probably significant. Um, that bit is kind of like, just taken from the ether for this podcast. So, but I couldn't get very far in the dream. I
Yeah,
didn't really analyze it. But as I say, my dreams are always kind of a bit of an enigma to me.
yeah. Would you like an
Yeah.
interpretation, a Jungian
So
interpretation?
I would love that. Yes. Could, was that
Probably.
it?
Yeah. Oh. Oh God. It's the morning. Sorry, but that's so rude. I forget what podcast I'm on sometimes. The Valley Cast is just like blah, blah, blah. I don't know. I don't like doing it, honestly. I always feel like there's something with instinctual energies. You're feeding instinctual thing, but dogs would represent some sort of companionship or some sort of a um, friendly instinctual thing, fun, loyalty. You compensating for not getting out of your instinctual side, or do you feel overly domesticated?
Well, see, this was, and this is interesting because this would be what I would say without being critical, because I think it's good. But that's look like I think a lot of Jungian interpretations look at the content of the dream over
Yes,
the form.
it's
But
quite
then
literally
the
stick with
content,
the image.
yeah. But then there's something useful about that because there is truth in that. Very much, and actually, I think the person resonates. So in that story I told you, if that was my dream, and the analyst, stuck with the imagery of the dream, I would probably come to some insights, but I think they're mostly conscious insights. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
like they're
that's a,
right there.
I know. So,
In,
oh, here I did want to say
Pre-conscious,
something.
please.
Yeah, about the psychoanalytic openings. I just remembered here in Belfast, there's this new psychoanalytic school opened, and they were called. And my friend was doing graphic design for them, and he called them out for this. They were called the Northern Irish uh, Psychoanalytic Society, and he showed me the material, and it bounced out to me straight
Like
away.
that. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Nips. Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
nips. I was like,
yeah.
this is a fucking Northern Irish psychoanalyst. They're called nips, like the nipple,
Yeah.
the mother's breast, and they didn't
Erogenous
notice it.
zone. One of
Yeah,
the major Freudian erogenous zones that later gets
absolutely. And
the
the whole
libido
thing
from
about
which.
the maternal, the motherly breast,
Oh,
and,
yeah.
and so yeah. So eventually, my friend Chris Fry, he was like, he forced them to change it. But they didn't see one, they didn't see it, and then two, they didn't see an issue with it. So now I think they're the Northern Irish Society of Psychoanalysis. A
Northern
little bit,
Irish Society of Psychoanalysis.
yeah. So
NISP.
no more nips.
That's a good call, man. That's two people need to recognize in this day and age that the first thing that will happen to you that is remotely negative is not going to be people canceling you. It comes first with them making fun of you. And in this irreverent world in which we live, you have to be incredibly careful with acronyms because if you accidentally spell something like nips or dicks or something or scat, that's a public transportation in Sarasota. You're gonna get made fun of, and you're never gonna be able to escape it, and that's bad.
Oh, very good.
Blows my
Yeah,
mind.
and the truth finds a way. That's parapraxis. I mean, I had it. I did it. I had it in psychoanalysis where I think I've told you about this. I wrote a check for my analyst. Was still writing checks in those days, and the amount that I wrote was 1690, right? Which is 1,690, which was not the cost that I was supposed to write the check for the analysis. And I did it, and I didn't think, but 1690 is a kind of significant date in Northern Ireland and Northern Irish history, and in terms of my school. And I went to a Protestant school, and so this number 1690 had some kind of unconscious dimension
Huh.
to it, and I wrote a Freudian check, didn't even notice, and yeah, kind of. Also, the other one was a Freudian email, where the designer of my book cover years and years ago was a guy called Bruce something, and in that book called Insurrection, in the book, the subtitle is I think to believe is human, to doubt divine, something like that. And I wrote an email to Bruce saying I'd like the lie in believe, LIE in believe. I want that to be read, but I sent it to my analyst Bruce Fink. So I sent to my
Ah, yeah,
analyst
yeah,
this email saying I want the lie and believe to be read.
yeah.
Didn't even know until my analyst brought it up. Said, he sent me an email last week. We should maybe talk about. And I was like, I didn't send you an email. He's like, no, you sent me an email. I didn't send you an email. I was like, oh, whoa, I did. I sent you an email. Very bizarre.
Not only that, but you said you sent it to your analyst and asked for it to be read. Like, there's a Like he's like, clearly, let's talk about it because you asked me to read it. Like you asked me to read the
Yes.
situation. See, it's fun.
That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, when you that's good. That's when you listen literally. You're a literalist, and it's brilliant. And you go, "Oh, I want the lie to be read." That's
Yeah.
brilliant. Exactly. It's like, yeah, because and that's where
Wow.
an analyst or literalist, they're fundamentalists. You listen not to what the person intends, but to what the person literally says. Because I didn't intend to say that, but I literally said it. The truth
I
is
can
in the
understand.
is in.
I can understand why people sometimes find me insufferable. I think it can be like that's the thing too with this stuff. I think people sometimes think that you uh, or I, to perhaps slightly lesser degree, will walk around trying to read between the lines that everybody says. But in reality, I barely pay attention to what other people say. So
Yes,
only in
I
very
yeah.
specific conversations. It's even
I
worse.
can second that. That Elliott, in fairness, does not care enough about anybody to listen that carefully.
I don't even know if you're out of sight. I don't even know that you wear. You know, actually, I was talking about this with my wife because as bad as I am, if she does not actively care about something, she will not like she won't retain a single thing, and it's really impressive at times. And she'll be like,
Oh, yeah.
"What are you gonna do? What's your plan tomorrow?" And I'll be like, "Well, I'm doing this, this, this," and then like 10 minutes later, she'll be like, "What are you doing tomorrow? What are you doing tomorrow?" I'm like, "Well, I'm doing this, 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 and this." And so it's just like we're just like filling this air with noise, and then I'll
Yes.
say it, and then she'll say it back, and then we'll be like, all right, "Do you care? Like, do you care what I'm doing tomorrow?" I don't. She's like, "No, I don't really care." It's very funny.
I have a friend who just last week I was out with them and they said, "Oh, I think I suffer from face blindness. This thing, face blindness, because I never recognize people, and I know this guy really well. He's a very nice guy, but like he just doesn't care." I was like, "You don't have face blindness. You just you just don't give a shit." And he's like, "Oh yeah, I guess so." Because like
That's
it just there's lack of concern. I'm not going to remember your face because I couldn't really be arsed.
Yeah, that's the Brad Pitt has that a lot, and he came out and like said it was like a really severe thing, and I don't maybe that's a real thing. I don't know anything
Yeah,
about face
I'm
blindness,
sure I'm
but
sure it is, and some people have it, but I don't think this person
yeah,
has it.
yeah, exactly. And I'm like, oh, Brad Pitt, one of the most gorgeous, talented, most successful actors of all time, who like is chill and smokes a lot of weed, has face blindness. No, he just doesn't give a crap. He doesn't have to
Yes,
remember. He's like a god among men. He can do whatever he wants.
yes.
God, I do. Have you seen Bullet Train? By the way, that's a really great movie.
Oh yeah, it did. I enjoyed it. I can't remember. Like I liked it, and I
Not
gotta
great
say
movie,
it's
I
one
should
of the
say. Yeah.
yeah, but it's one of the few movies that modern movies I've enjoyed because I have given up mostly on modern movies. Like
Yes.
if I ever watch a movie, I 9 times out of 10 it's going to be something from a long time ago. Um,
Yeah.
I'm trying to think
No,
of
they're
that.
not good.
There's a couple. Yeah. Have you seen anything recently that you've liked?
Succession, but I've told you for years you got to watch
Oh,
Succession, but I know
oh
it's hard for you to.
I've
Have you done it?
started. No, I've started to watch it, and it's very good.
Very good. Yeah, stick with it because the most recent season seems pretty insane. But I started watching Lucky Hank, which is Bob Odenkirk. We do TV, so it's all TV. But Lucky Hank with Bob Odenkirk is about an English professor who's like at a kind of mediocre college, and it's sort of good. We realize it's basically a sitcom, like a kind of a sitcom-y type show, so it makes it easier to forgive some of the cheesier moments. It's a little writery, but it's pretty good. And Bob Odenkirk, I think, is a national treasure. So. Ed, what about
Yeah.
you? Have you watched anything like good that you?
Not much, but I'm doing every now and again. I do a thing on my Patreon called Exposure. So it's a film. We talk about a movie. We watch a movie, talk about a movie, and I'm doing it in 2 weeks. And I was trying to think, what am I going to do? And I think I'm going to do a movie called. I think it's called Riders of Justice, and it's got your man Mads Mikkelsen. Is that his name?
Yeah,
In it, and it was very good. Now it's a few years old, but it's a really good movie, and yeah, that's not the last good movie I saw, but that in the last few years, that's a movie that stands
cool.
out to me. Really, really good. Yeah.
There's a movie called Paddington. I think I thought not Paddington Bear, but I do want to see those as well. But it's starring Adam Driver, and he plays he lives in Paddington, New Jersey, which is where some poet. And it's one of those like mildly boring movies, but not really boring, just sort of like pleasantly chill and very slice of lifey. And like he does such a great job with this very subtle character, but he plays a striving poet or aspiring poet, and a bus driver. It's really great, and so I would recommend
Okay.
that as well. I kind of want to revisit that because it's also just interesting. He's such a good. There's so many good actors. We got Penguin coming out. There's entertainment galore right now. So
What's coming out?
uh, um, the new Penguins show. They're making a Colin Farrell Penguin. You know, I love the Batman, and
No.
so they're
Are they?
yeah,
Oh, a TV show, not a movie?
yeah, a whole TV show where he like they released a trailer and it looks pretty intense, and he's like got the big old like penguin makeup on, and so it's set in the same universe as Batman, and it looks it looks darker than the movie did. So I'm stoked about that. My nerd bones getting scratched.
You know that I saw that meme once where it's like it shows like whatever the first Batman came out, 2001, a darker, grittier Batman, and then it says 2012, a darker, grittier Batman, 2000, a darker, grittier Batman. Like you keep thinking they can't go darker and grittier, but every time
Oh,
they do.
I love that meme so much. It's the guy from Watchmen, the blue dude, who's on the planet darker. 12 years later, a darker, grittier black Batman. 2018, a darker, grittier Batman. Very funny. What other kind of dream stuff can we talk about? And do you believe in treating life itself as a dream, or excuse me, do you believe that life is but a dream?
Life is but a dream. What's that? Is that a song?
Yeah, I believe so. I don't know if it's a
Yeah.
Disney something or other.
Very good. So what was the first question?
Dreams. Any other types of dreams that you want to cover?
Yeah, no, I mean the big thing I was like say the big insight whenever you mentioned lucid dreaming, the big thing that came to mind was the question of the extent to which that is like being in psychosis. It's also for anybody who wants to know what derealization or depersonalization feels like, kind of feels like that, or what it feels like to kind of like lose all touch with logic and reason in your waking life. Um, that yeah, so that's kind of I think an interesting, and I need to do some reading on that because I haven't read anything explicitly that links the two, but I'm guessing there is some sort of interesting connection there. Um,
Nice.
and then the big thing I'm interested in is just that idea of what Freud called the navel of the dream, which is whenever you're listening to a dream, it's you can you can tell something about your kind of conscious wishes. You can tell if you're whatever's going on in your life, you might get a little bit of insight. But actually, more fundamentally, you can often tell how your desire works, what your desire is invested in, um, and that can be very disruptive in a good way. So, for some psychoanalysts like Lacan, he says that a psychoanalytic interpretation that makes sense is not a psychoanalytic interpretation. Like the point is not to give an interpretation of a dream that the person goes, "Oh yeah, that's great and that sounds right," but also it's to do something that evokes a change. Just like if the person in that dream, the analyst, if I told them the dream about coming home, drinking the beer, having the arguments, and their intervention is, "Oh, so it started." I was like, "Oh, I'm waiting for this TV show to start," and then she starts arguing with me. Oh, so it did start. That moment is like this moment in which something is released, something is some enjoyment that I get out of the arguments is divested. I think that's what dream work is not getting an insight into, oh, this is what's going on in my life, but a good psychoanalytic interpretation is one in which it changes how you do it. And one example of that was a friend of mine who was having this dream in which he kept messing up. I can't remember in what way, but it was something to do with car meters, where he kept messing up and embarrassing himself. And I remember saying to him, "Oh, so you enjoy being humiliated by X person?" And at that moment, he was able to go, "Oh, I do. There's something, although I hate that this person's always humiliating me and putting me down, there's something in me that gets something out of that." And he said that the moment that after that happens, he this was his ex-partner, he started to treat her differently and not accept when he was being belittled. and it changed the dynamic. But what changed was he realized he was getting enjoyment out of being belittled, and in that insight, he stopped getting enjoyment from it, and the whole dynamic changed.
Nice. And they lived happily ever after. So clearly, I just get enjoyment out of not having a subject to write about for the next 2 years.
Oh, yeah, maybe.
Fair enough.
That's interesting. Yes. Yeah.
I'll take it.
Perpetually putting it off.
Yes,
The
which I'm
neurotic.
very good at. Yes, the return of the neurotic. Hey, everybody, welcome
Yeah.
back. Cool. Well,
Which
this has
plays out
been...
in it plays out in like because I'm waiting because I want you to do a Elliott Morgan show, but
Yeah.
I've got a feeling you keep putting it off.
I was thinking about, I do, in that interesting, oh boy, I have to do therapy in like an hour. So
Oh, yeah.
I'll have to do the same conversation. But yeah, it's fascinating that because he'll go, so it's funny. It's like, you want to do this thing. And he's like, you say you're going to do it. And then weeks turn into months and months turn into a year. And all of a sudden it's still not happening. And he'll be like, what's going on? I'm like, I don't know. It's your job to figure out, dude. I was like,
Yes.
maybe I don't want to. Maybe I enjoy not doing it. But I'm thinking about
Yes.
doing a Substack type deal. Have you ever done that? I'm just starting to get into it. Have you poked around
No,
on that?
but people swear by it, and a lot of people I deep respect have Substacks and do that, and have even
Really?
and said that I should, but I haven't looked into it. So I'd be interested what your experience is going to be like on that.
I think there's something to just writing and being able to formulate my thoughts that gets me a little bit more jazzed than feeling like videos. I rely on other people a little bit, but that's also all logistical bullshit, and it's not really true. So see, I'm doing the thing again where I just sort of like rattle off the same old excuses. But again, I'll be talking to Gary about it, and Gary will make fun of me a little bit, and that's what he does.
Yeah.
And I enjoy his humiliation as he mocks me. Anyway,
Yeah.
this has been very fun. Pete, is there anything people should know about? Do you want to plug anything? Do you want to? I mean, we just did Easter, so do you want to give an Easter blessing or plug an Easter appropriate book of yours?
I would. The one thing I could mention, I don't think this would be, very few. There's, very many people would be willing to, or interested in this, but I do my yearly kind of autumn retreat, and it's actually there's only 5 places left. I take this whole beautiful hotel in Northern Ireland, and for 5 days there's a spa and a hotel, and we do philosophy and we do art and music and all of that together. So I can mention that, but like there's only 5 spots left. If anybody's ever wanted to go to Ireland for an October retreat, then definitely check that out. That would be my one plug. Have you got anything to
Very
plug?
nice. I will just say that once again, as we were saying before we hit record, I was shocked that we have an audience for this podcast. I always assume that we don't, and so if people want to help out with it, they can go to patreon.com/thefundamentalists, and we will again, as we always do, go through spurts of activity on the podcast. But if you want to get in there, on the Patreon, it helps us pay for the editing and for the Squadcast program that we use to be able to do stuff. So if you check it out,
Which at
if
the
you enjoy
moment
this.
helps you because you're the one paying for this. I haven't paid for
Yes.
anything really yet. So
Yep.
yeah. So at the moment, Elliott is basically paying for everything. Please
It's
help
once
him.
again, yeah. I'm from just front. No, yeah. Please help me. That's my favorite way that people ever plug Patreons. Please help me. But yeah, feel free to do it, and we'll post stuff and maybe do. We have been talking about doing a thing where people can join us on this program. They have a thing called this. What's it called? There's the stage, and then there's backstage, and you can watch us as we do this, and we might throw up a link on the Patreon at some point if people want to just join in or maybe throw out questions while we're recording, which might be kind of fun. I'm sure.
Oh, that would be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if anybody, please tweet us or whatever, Instagram us ideas, topics for conversation. I would love to hear what
Yeah.
you guys want us to talk about. That would be very helpful as well.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. This has been a wonderful conversation, and may you dream peacefully.
Bye bye.